Hello, Global Theater. My name is Jerry Fielka. Today's November 4, 2022. We want to thank Rob Grant and his amazing podcast. I'm probably wrong about everything. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here today with James Ellis. Thank you, James.
Yeah, no worries, man. I'm excited. It's good to be here.
Where in the heck you calling in from?
Uh, southeast England, a little county called Norfolk where nothing happens and no one comes and no one leaves.
First question is, what is the best thing for a human being?
Man, I watched a few of your videos and I know you ask these big vague questions, and they're like questions I struggle to answer. What's the best thing for a human being? I would say, like, I would give you an abstract thing straight back at you. I'd say contentment, not happiness. I don't like happiness, and not. I would say contentment, right? Because it covers all your bases.
It's
To be
good
content. Yeah.
to be content. I love that. And so, yeah, and I appreciate it. The word vague is great. I love that. I had a rock group called Vaguely once, and I liked your word struggle. But again, it's your hunch, your guess is fine, your intuition. What's your favorite form of information? How it comes into you?
Um. You know, ironically, consider I spend all my time reading. But I'm like, they had this big thing when I was in school of trying to figure out what type of learner you are. So you have visual, whatever. But I was more I found out over time I'm more, I guess you'd say, kinesthetic. So I learned best via doing. I don't, despite reading philosophy all day, I don't really like spending all that much time with complete abstraction. Like, I was probably most content when I was a woodworker, right? Like, I prefer, like, end of the day, I see that I've built a window or whatever, right? I think that's good for people to have that. Whereas with philosophy, at the end of the day, you're talking like, I've figured out something to do with being or something. It's not good for you. So
Yeah,
I'm kinesthetic. I'm very practical.
I like that. By doing, but you implied reading, and you're loaded with books in the back.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
I
just
haven't read any of these.
That's my hero was influenced by Marcel Duchamp, and he says, "I had a Duchamp book, but I never read it." I
That's
says,
like
that's very Duchampian."
exactly, yeah.
But as a reader, you implied you're a reader. Did you grow up more becoming a reader because your parents read? They did it as an example, they told you to read, or on your own?
I didn't read properly till I was probably like 19. So I read in school. I read because you had to read, and I was like, I was lazy,
Yeah,
really lazy. I got like straight B's. I could have got A's if I was lazy. I'd have got T's. My CV, like my report, was like it seemed like a lie because every single grade was a B. It was like I was like, yeah, B, 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 whatever. I don't care. I was middle of the ground. Every teacher knew I was lazy, underachiever, and I look back, and it's because ultimately most high school curriculums and when you're taught to read is you're given stuff which it's just not relevant, right?
right.
I don't want to be reading like Shakespeare's great, but you're not going to fully understand him unless you're some genius at 13, 14 years old. And it was Much Ado About Nothing, which is not the best one, right? And then Steinbeck, I read Of Mice and Men, I quite enjoyed that, and Arthur Miller. Those were like the staples of high school for me. So I was like, this is somewhat interesting, but it just didn't click. And then yeah, I lucked out with a good couple of teachers who were like, yeah, by the way, read this. This is much better. And so, yeah, it was about 19 that I really properly started reading. So, and then, yeah, and then just went for it. I
So
mean,
you mean you picked it up on your own? You picked up
yeah,
reading
yeah,
on your own.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. No, yeah, no one, the school system or anyone around you doesn't actually care about you reading. You
yeah,
read because it's a mode of socialization, right? They
very
don't
good.
care about the books. They don't care about
That's
the content.
that's
Teachers
good.
don't care about what they teach.
Yeah. Well, why do you think humans collect or gather information?
Unfortunately, I'm on the pessimistic side of things. I think the reason most humans, I would say 80, 90% most of the reason most humans do anything is mimetic. They do it because other people do it and that's what they got
Yeah,
to do to get by. But in terms of gathering information, like most people would gather enough to appease their employer
Yeah.
And outside of that, they wouldn't really care more than that. So unfortunately, I would say, yeah, why do most people do anything is just to get by in life. There are you get the outliers who have genuine interests in things, and
Yeah.
at that point, you just say, who knows where they come from, right? Who knows where your hobbies come from?
It's good. Do you
Like,
think
yeah.
this need or want to collect information is more innate or more invented?
I think it's innate, but it's changed from a need of like a need to collect quality information, which is of quality, and it's changed to collecting information quantifiably. So now we're to do with, if you know more, you just know more generally, like you've collected like 1,000 bits of data, whatever that means. Whereas before it was to do with a qualitative relationship with the information. And I think you need balance.
Yep.
Um, yeah, I think you need a bit of both.
It's really good. Yeah, there's one lady or woman I interviewed once. She says, "You have too much information in your head." And I was like, "Well, I do, but I try to make it important in understanding the relationship."
Well,
So,
I
anyway,
think oh no, I'll make a comment on that because it's a big
yeah,
thing that I like, is that I think most people, myself included, have what I like to call information indigestion. So
yeah,
we're cramming it in, but we never give ourselves any. And I think that leads to a lot of distress and anxiety, right? Like in the same way that your stomach's distressed if you shove it full of birthday cake, your
yep,
minds are if you don't let anything. You know, but we have no time to process stuff
yeah,
at all. We have no time to like digest it, or even just allow it to like come out as a waste product, right? We're just constantly cramming, and a lot of the time it's not even our choice to cram, right?
yep.
Like you go out into a city, boom, you're just already like exhausted. You don't even realize it. So yeah,
Amazing. So much, you get what I'm after, James. You're really, hitting them out of the ballpark. I really appreciate it, and I'm learning a lot. And I would say this is somewhat how I digest information is by doing a long, a good 90 minutes with someone and sussing ideas out a little.
yeah.
So, do thoughts create emotions?
No, I would say that the emotions are quicker than thoughts, and then thoughts are the behavioral response to emotions. I would say that in the stream of the body, emotions, and thought, I'm going off a thinker called Gurdjieff, who I agree with. Let's say you're angry, right? Your body reacts quicker than everything else. You tense up, you don't even realize it. It's like instinctive. Then you have the emotional response, and then your intellectual response comes in actually way later, even though it seems quick, to like rationalize and put a behavioral, a habitual thing. So you do need to train your intellect to try get before the emotional response, but that's pretty hard to do. Um, but do thoughts bring out emotions? I would say rarely, because you already they do, but you know what you're doing, right? It's like thinking
Yeah.
back on creating a false scenario in your head where you get angry. Like you have enough information to look back on the scenario and be like, yeah, I'm an idiot. Like I've done this to myself. Why did I do this?
Why?
Um,
Well, did
yeah,
you say Gurdjieff was
yeah.
basically body, emotions, then thinking?
That's the speed at which those things react for him.
Yeah,
The speed of which that's body's fastest, then emotions, then um
yeah,
yeah. And if you get control of your body in that way, like if you truly relax your body, you find it's very difficult to actually get angry on the emotional level. And then the anger is just this rational thing where you can basically just say, "Yeah, I'm annoyed," but it doesn't actually affect you, and it doesn't sap up all your energy being angry, right? People
really good.
say, "I am angry," like
Yeah,
they are literally the anger. It's like, well, it's useless, but
yeah.
good luck to you.
I don't know what I think until I fill in the blank.
Uh, hmm. I don't know what I think until I don't think that's to do with data. That's to do with experience. I would say experience, which is one of
Experience
the
it.
yeah, experience it. It's one. I mean, you literally can't know until you experience it, right?
Well, that's
You
funny because I've gotten a raise in that word in my interviews recently. There more people are saying experience it because I got it from McLuhan says, I don't know what I think until I say it. Joan Didion said, "I don't know what I think until I write it."
Writing is a big part of experiencing though, because
Yeah,
in writing you have to
yeah.
like offload it and put it all out, and then you go, actually, yeah, I don't agree with that. But experience, like another Gajifian thing, two lines, knowledge and being, and most people's line of knowledge has gone 10 times far ahead of them, so they know 10 times the amount of what they've actually experienced, and that's pretty unhealthy. But the other way is unhealthy also.
Well, you have the SP because or you must have it because you anticipated the next question. Stupid question. I know it's both and it depends, but are your observations of humans in general, are we
Mm.
more thinking beings or more feeling beings?
We're reactive.
Yeah.
We're reactive. I don't know. I think both of those can be reactive, and
Yep.
thinking and feeling. But most of those are just completely programmed for most people. From like once once you're about after 9, 10 years old, the reactions that you have in relation to both those things are completely crystallized. And so, are those emotions or thoughts your own? Who knows? We're
Yeah.
reactive, but we are way more. To answer that seriously, we are way more emotive than we ever like to think. Even when we think we're thinking intellectually, most of the time there is a little emotional thing which is leaning on us. Like
Yeah.
we rationalize in relation to what would make us feel good, right?
Yeah.
We're not very rational creatures at all.
Yeah, well, that's an 80 in by emotive, I'm assuming you mean feeling a little more
Mm, mm,
because
mm,
I always say, well, you can't separate feeling from thinking, but we think we can because we invented the words.
mm.
Oh, there's feeling and thinking. So I always say what I learned from Bridget Bardot said, I don't think when I make love. I'm like, good luck. That's like, how do you shut your brain off when you're doing the most sensuous thing the body
Mm.
could do? And then it's like meditators say, don't think about thinking, So, anyways, can humans think without language?
They can think without what we'd consider to be this sort of language that we're doing. There doesn't always have to be a monologue, but of the intuition, like the intuitive gut-based thinking, which is probably related to the subconscious and the unconscious and the archetypes. That's a language of a sort. But in terms of probably what you mean by the question, I believe so, and I think that's the more important language. That's the more important thinking, right?
Yeah,
Like people say, trust your gut. Every time I've gone against my gut, it hasn't gone well, right?
yeah,
So that and then that's a type of thinking, but there certainly isn't language there. Sometimes you just know. So yeah, we can.
yeah. Chomsky says a language is not just words. It's a culture, a tradition, a unification of community, a whole history that creates what a community
Mhm.
is. What do you do, James, when language breaks down? When
Oh, that's
language,
oh man,
yeah,
that's the
when
dream.
language doesn't work, what do you do?
Get excited, man. That's what you want because that's when all the that's when the that's when the presumptions get revealed. This brilliant thing I found. Someone told me recently. You know, the Russian language is 80% passive, so they very rarely are talking about I, me, mine, ours, right, which is directive or positive, right? So the Russian language is 80% passive. So they're the way that that's informed their culture is if you speak to Russian people, they're generally more realist and like this is how it's going to be, and that's informed their culture. And I would say from what I've experienced of it, at least the people I've spoken to, it's not as a selfish narcissistic culture as the West, which is like
Yeah,
almost everything we ever talk about is always like it's always implicitly in relation to us. We say I like every other word basically. So yeah, man, once language starts to break down, that's when you start seeing the cracks in your own thought and all the presumptions which uphold your worldview.
really good. Two questions from Alan Turing, 1950s. Is thinking a function of the soul?
It can be, but it takes a long while to get to that point. You got a lot of layers of crap to get through before your soul and the way your being and the soul and your soul are in connection. Before that, you got your personality, you've got culture, you've got all your presumptions, you got everything your parents taught you, everything school taught you. You got a big solidified load of crap to get through before that communication's taken place. In time. Yeah.
Brilliant.
You there? Oh yeah. Yeah.
Well, yeah, brilliant. Yeah. The second Turing, can machines think?
I don't think so, because the machines, as I understand them at the moment, are my knowledge of this area, isn't, you call it the I'm probably wrong about everything. I'm probably wrong about this. But like, for instance, just take these AI machines where they're recreating, you put in an input, and it recreates the photo. As far as I'm aware, they're being trained on images, right? So they just have a huge database of this is what a tree is. So in the sense that humans are doing that, like you to look at 1,000 trees, then you go paint a tree, there's still something innate in humans which could just completely change it. Like Van Gogh, right? He did his own thing. Could a machine just suddenly do that? Like, I think it can think within the confines of all the data that's been input into
Yeah.
it. But whether or not it can actually create, because it's just its creations are all collages. It's all imitation. So it can, in a very limited sense. And but this is the problem. We keep developing machines in relation. It's narcissistic again. Machines
Yep.
are trying to be like an imitation of ourselves. It's like, well, why do that? Like, you
Yeah.
notice these robots they made with the what's that place called? Like literally the robots that are running around.
Yeah.
My question is, we know there's a ton of flaws with the human being, the Achilles heel, right? Like, why not try redesign that? I mean, they could say, well, why are you reinventing the wheel? But why have you made a robot just exactly like a human?
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense to me. But there you
Yeah.
go.
That's good. Do you more pursue happiness or more pursue meaning?
Meaning, absolutely. Happiness is really boring.
Does
Have you
the
ever been? Have you ever been happy?
I love it. You're throwing a question back at
Have you
me.
ever? Have you ever
I
sincerely been
sure
happy?
I sure hope that I am truly happy when I'm hugging my wife or something like that. I feel happy.
But it's
So
an after. It's an after. That's an after effect of a
yeah,
more contextual
yeah,
meaning, though, right?
yeah, it is. And I got the question from Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. He said,
Mm,
happiness doesn't last, meaning does.
mm,
So,
mm.
that's an interesting, and there's a lot of variations on it. Do you think, does the brain more detect consciousness or create consciousness? Like, is consciousness there bubbling away and we're detecting it, or are we actually creating it?
We detect it. It can. We've got the ability to completely reveal it within us. We reveal it. We reveal it. It's like an archaeology of our own being. But we just keep throwing shit over the top of it. Sorry, am I allowed to swear?
Of course. Sorry about that. Was good. Yeah. Um, what's faster, speed of light or speed of thought?
It's different. It's like different metaphysics for the two.
Yeah.
The speed of emotion is faster than the speed of light.
Speed of emotion. You're brilliant. See, this is what I'm after is how can we as a team reword the questions, get new verbs and new words into the questions. So that was good. Yeah, I like that. Audre Lorde, the poet, says you can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tools. Yvonne Rainer responded to her and said, you can if you expose the tools. What new tool do you suggest?
This is like my whole work, man. This is what I'm interested in. The foundation of this question is, what are the presumptions which you can't see because they're so presumed, right? And what tool do I try use? My general tool, it's not new, but I try be discursive as much as I can. So
Yeah.
and this is an exercise I give to people, like when you're buying something at like the supermarket, I don't know, maybe a new pillow for your bed. Keep questioning the purchase as far back as you can to realize what presumption and the presumption for that is like comfort, right? So then you can keep working back from that. But yeah, being discursive about all things.
What's another word for discursive?
I would emphasize that it's not deconstruction. It's not deconstruction. Interrogation.
Okay.
Interrogate
Good.
yourself.
Yeah. Interrogate yourself. Very good. What new toy do you suggest?
Toy. Give an example of a toy.
You want me to give you an example? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah,
know what you mean by toy.
you put it in, you put all these into the context you want. So, I mean, in general, Lily Tomlin says reality's just a collective hunch. So
Mm,
I think all words are just a collective hunch. We sort of define what is a toy? Well, people think toys are related to childhood, or adults have these new things like, oh, that's a new thing in my life. That's like a new toy. So,
mm,
the word play is often associated with toys. A tool is like, you using a
mm.
microphone in the internet and Zoom,
Okay.
platforms is like a
I haven't.
tool.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
got an answer. I got an
Yeah.
answer. So for toys for children, I'd go off D.W. Winnicott's theory that toys for children are generally things which appease their existential terror. Right. So like a teddy bear for a child is a transitional object. It's like a companion for them into adulthood when their parents aren't around. I would say then in that sense, what adults need aren't actually toys, but anti-toys. They need something which is gonna be like a rift or a conscious shock in their world to make for a child it makes the ease of life more apparent. I think at a certain point you need an anti-toy to make death more apparent. So I would say things I like to have weapons around. I like to have things that make it clear
Yeah.
that life's sort of futile
Yeah.
and fragile.
Yeah. Can you forget to die?
Most people already have. Most people are already most people are already dead. Most people are already dead.
But James, I put it into the context of you. Can you, James, forget to die? Yes,
Absolutely. At any moment.
absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Very good. What do you worry about when you go to bed at night?
Mm, I don't worry all that much. I just create these huge fake scenarios, like movie length discussions.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't worry all that much.
that's good.
It's really. Do you think it's difficult to actually see what you're actually worrying about though?
Well, this is a question. Funny where I got it was from Errol Morris's movie with Rumsfeld.
Mm,
And he just said, "Hey, what do you worry about at night?" And so I said, "That's a good question." So, you
mm,
know, um, I find people want to say, I don't want to worry at night. But then people often say money. They say different concerns, health, older men, like how many times I got to get up and pee tonight.
mm. Yeah, but the
So
the worry about money is really a worry about security,
that's it. Yeah. Yeah, well,
and it's stupid to worry about security. There's no
it's
such
stupid.
thing.
So this is again you anticipating the next question. Do you think you have ESP a little, or
What's ESP?
ESP is extrasensory perception? It's like knowing something's going to happen before it happens.
You shouldn't ask me that question though, because I think the more you focus on whether or not you have these things, it like it dissipates the ability, right?
that there
Maybe
there's
I don't know. I think that's to do with relaxation and
yeah,
that gut instinct. The more
yeah,
you're empirical, more like you need the exact data, the more that sort of thing flies away. So I wouldn't put a label on it, but I'd be like, yeah, a
yeah,
lot of the time I get those
yeah,
instincts. But I'm not trying to read your next question.
yeah. I know, but
But the
it's
but the one you're going to ask me in about 12 minutes, man, I'm not keen on that one.
well, it's like two things. It's like when people go, the phone rings and go, I was just thinking of you, and then the person calls.
Mm,
So but Emo Phillips, a comedian, has a great one.
mm.
He says, if you have telekinetic powers, raise my hand. So this is a question. McLuhan learned from Ezra Pound that artists are the antenna of the race. So,
Mm,
by artists, I mean musicians, painters,
mm, mm,
podcasters.
mm.
Artists are antenna of the race. They broadcast and detect the hidden psychic effects of our inventions so that we can learn to cope with what we don't like about the inventions. So
Mhm.
I asked you, James, the question Marshall probed his whole career. Why do we ignore the hidden psychic effects of our inventions, even though the artists are broadcasting them to us?
Because I'm getting this from Mumford, but because d- we conflate the abilities of the machine and the abilities of our creations, things we've created, with the creations themselves, right? So we build all these machines that can do certain things, and then we literally immediately forget that we created them, and we just assign the abilities to the machines themselves. So we
Yeah.
completely forget about, and then all of a sudden, our creations live in this abstract world of, like, as if they're all autonomous and without our actual input, right? Like, most people don't even believe that smartphones or PC screens are actually built, right? They just are, and they can do that themselves. It's not like someone made them do it. So we abstract these things, and then at that point, then we're at a loss to actually, yeah, we're not that smart, basically.
Yeah. That's good. Very sharp. Thank you. Do artists have moral obligation?
I hate obligation. No one has any obligations. No,
That
no,
is good. That
no
is
one
good.
has any.
Forget the word moral. Listen, most people
I get the
want
question. I just hate it.
yeah, but most people wanna say everybody has a moral
Oh,
obligation, and
no,
then
no.
most people say they have a moral obligation to themselves. But, great art, in my opinion, fucks your shit up and makes you say, "I can do that."
I just the thing with the obligation is, I was saying, says who,
Yeah,
right? Who's telling me what to do, and what's their right to tell me what to do? Not in like
yeah,
an angsty teen way, but a lot of people, oh, artists have a moral obligation. Well, if you think they have an obligation, then you have an obligation to go do your own art or whatever, right?
yeah.
Like, that's offloading your own responsibility to say that someone else has the obligation. I don't know. No, no, no,
That
no one,
that
no one has any obligations.
yeah.
It's fine.
No, I appreciate what you said. It evoked what you said evoked 2 funny one of my favorite bumper stickers is "Question authority, but not your mother."
That's good. That's good.
And the other one is one of my best friends taught me this one, "Question authority, says who?"
Yeah, I'm exactly on that, man.
Are you more afraid of new ideas or more afraid of old ideas?
Nah, they're all the same. There's no such thing as new
Ah,
ideas. There's no such thing as new ideas.
very good. James, can you conjure up your earliest memory ever or one of them?
My earliest vivid memory that I could call a memory is I was old enough that I could have been in the pushchair, but I was walking next to it, and there was this weird man who lived near us, and there was like trees that overhung uh, a road. This is a psychoanalyst's like dream to have this as my earliest memory. And this man, he had a dog, and he obviously used to get the dog crap in the bag, and he'd wait for this specific point in the road, and he'd throw it up, and then it would come down and like hang from the branch of these trees. So in autumn, when there was no leaves, when you looked up, there was like 30, 40 bags of dog shit all hanging from these trees. That's what, like, one of my
Wow,
earliest memories. It's incredible, right? That's probably why
that
I'm
is
such a
incredible.
that's probably why I'm such a pessimist, right? At any point, I'm like, man, a bag of dog crap could just come down.
In a tree.
Yeah.
Is memory more a curse or more a blessing?
Uh, it's both. So it's
Yeah,
a curse if it's not very well trained, and you don't spend much time with it, because your memory is really not your best ally, because you tend to just habitually focus on the worst of the worst. Like, we don't remember things very well at all.
yeah.
But I think it can be a blessing if you keep with it and train it every day. Yeah.
Please tell me someone within your immediate family, then outside your immediate family, just
Mhm.
briefly, who had an impact on you, kinda like a role model,
Mm.
and what specifically was that impact?
So immediate family is my great uncle. Yeah, he just had the impact of, like, uh in a way, like an anarchic type figure, completely thought for himself.
Yeah,
to an extreme degree. So that was, and also lived a very stable and principled life. So that was his impact. Outside of my family, role model, uh, man, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe like my first priest. Yeah, he was a good guy. Found good balance. Yeah, those would be the two.
Did your parents raise you a particular religion?
No, no. General apathy of just nothing.
Yeah. But
Didn't take any of it seriously.
but just to clarify the outside of your immediate family, you said your
Mm.
first priest.
Yeah,
Doesn't
I became Catholic recently.
Oh, your first
Yeah.
priest that they you weren't raised, but now you're
No, no,
converted to
no.
Catholicism.
Yeah.
Okay, and so do you pray?
Yeah, I tried to. I try to find the time. You know, we should. As every Catholic would say, I I pray not as much as I should.
If God does exist, what would you like God to say to you after you die?
Uh, all is forgiven. Everything's gonna be all right.
Shh, beautiful.
Thanks,
Do
man.
evil people exist, or does evil use people as a vehicle?
It uses a bit of both. I mean, evil can't literally move your hand. There's always a extent of free will. There's always the choice of free will. But in a world where evil has been allowed a big foothold, you know, there's like so much evil that there's a certain point where you could say if someone's completely raised in evil, to what extent can you say of them that they actually know any better, right? That at that point it's sort of ignorance. Like there's a difference between a willful evil person and someone who is actually just completely ignorant of the fact that the culture they've been brought up in is evil. Yeah.
Yeah. How do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? And I'll set it up with a few thinkers. Alan Watts says, if you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them. Coppola stole from the mob and the samurais, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. JFK said, forgive your enemy, but don't forget their name.
Hmm.
Fellini says, I need an enemy. So it's a lot of thoughts. The basic question is, how do you, James, advise someone to deal with an enemy? But first, how would you respond to Alan Watts? If you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty much in agreement with Watts. I think there's obviously some nuance, but on that enemy friend, very personal level of singular people in your life, I would say like, what are you doing going around thinking of people as like if you consider someone literally your enemy, like some sort of Marvel movie, I don't know what's wrong with you, right? Like there might be people you dislike, but I would just be like, well, why are you consciously right? If there's someone you consciously dislike and you have to be around them like a job, I would say that it's probably your best bet to leave the job,
Yeah.
you know, because it's just a conscious waste of time. But if there's like just randomly someone in the world that you don't ever come across, and you're going around thinking, "I hate that person," right? They're my enemy. That's not a way to live. That is a big waste of time. But in terms of like that collective level of people you think are doing evil to the world, yeah, it's a tough one. But it's all the thing of like, are you going to expend a load of energy where you don't need to? Like, if you can't change everything right now, but you're slowly working towards it, I don't think it's good to think of people as like enemies, capital E.
Yeah. Really well put. And so this question is, are we hardwired for competition? Like, is competition innate or invented? And I'll set it up with Nassim Taleb's quote: games were created to give non-heroes the illusion of winning. In real life, you don't really know who won or lost, but you can tell who a hero is and who is not.
Yeah, you can. I think differs if you're a man or a woman. Women aren't really as competitive, at least not in the traditional sense men are. Maybe they are in a way that I can't see, but I don't think women are as competitive as men. I think men and naturally are very competitive. Like, and the danger of our society channeling Ted Kaczynski would be that once all your needs are met, food, shelter, water, all the ease, and once you just have this easy life, you're going to start just filling it in with random stuff, and you're probably going to be competitive for its own sake. And that's competition for its own sake. That's when it's, I don't know, kind of dangerous, because it's like,
So,
yeah,
yeah.
I don't know.
Well,
Are you competitive?
well, I grew up a Midwest American baby boomer, so you're forced to play sports, and you look up to sports heroes, and then eventually I abandoned sports. I mean, I like to be uh, active, but I don't
Mm,
really want to watch football game or sports games. But I don't diss people who do.
mm,
But, I think they put a bar in every corner in America with sports on the walls so you don't pay attention to the politics. But then
mm,
someone said, "Yeah, if you go into the bar, they're all talking politics and not
mm.
sports." So
Yeah,
who knows?
I'm competitive about how much I can not care. I want to not care more than other people. How
Yeah,
about that? Like,
I'm
I'm
like
competitive, but it's things I can't see I'm being competitive about. So
that's great.
I try not to care about politics, and every day I'm like, how can I care about
Yeah,
it less?
yeah, no, it's because there's things that tell us what we're supposed to be caring about. But here's how this one person addressed this competition question.
Mhm,
Villains don't think they are bad. They want control.
mhm,
Heroes want freedom. So I went to the question I don't ask very often is Gregory Bateson says, that when you catch a criminal, they might go, "Oh, my criminal skills weren't up to snuff that day." Or they might go, "Oh, I did something morally and socially wrong." We don't know which they're going to say.
they'd
So
probably say the first one.
my criminal skills weren't up to snuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
So then the question is, does punishment work?
No.
Yeah.
Punishment as deterrent works, but not in the sense people think they do. You're not
Yeah.
by like, so for instance, statistically, yeah, you can like lash people, and at the times when we've done, what is it, 10 lashes with a whip, those people are less there is less likely to do it. But it not in the sense people think you're literally eradicating, those people still want to do it, right?
Yeah.
There's a great essay on this called After the Law by Nick Land, which is one of my favorite essays of all time, about the taking, of Gilles de Rais, probably the worst
Yeah.
human who ever lived, taking him to court, and this and the impotence of that act, right? So Land sort of has this argument of like, justice is already impotent at this juncture because the acts, we're here for, like, evil has won, right? So what is punishment at this point?
Yeah.
Evil has absolutely won. So yeah.
Yeah. James Joyce was the first projectionist in Dublin about 100 years ago. He basically checked out. He said, "This is stupid. Why should I go inside a building and see a movie of a tree when I can go outside and see a real tree?"
Mm,
Years later, Faulkner said, "Sometimes the best fiction is more true than journalism. Why do we have to recreate things in order to get them? Why do we have to go to a theatrical play of people acting out life? Why don't we just live life?"
mm. Well, plays generally e- e- expand upon the underlying existential emotions of human life, right? They're like examples of the dramatic ends of things. I certainly wouldn't want to watch a play about like the ongoings of a retail store in the UK, because most people are just boring. So that, it's you've picked a clear, it's all sculpted. Like, he could say that, but I would say, anyone who says it, like Faulkner says it, I would say, well, I'll challenge you to go watch a film about like the actual just ongoings of a village shop or something, right? Like, all you're going to be watching is 2 hours of like, morning, how are you? Yeah, not bad. You, right? Like, it's not the same thing.
Well, I know. I need to challenge you a little because
Mm.
have you ever studied Beckett's Waiting for Godot or seen any Frederick Wiseman documentaries?
I like waiting for good Godot, but Beckett is such a master of a writer that implicitly making the uninteresting interesting, because that's the existential problem that we're all in, is the waiting
Yeah,
for something that we don't even know what it is. But he's good enough to do that.
yeah.
I don't think there's a waiting for Godot happening most of the time for most people. I don't know. Maybe I'm right.
No,
Yeah,
that
I
was
don't know.
good. It's, for the other example was Frederick Wiseman. He's made
Mm,
40 documentaries in 40 years. And that it's
mm,
like you go into a shopping mall for 6 hours and then there's no voiceover, no added
mm,
music. You're just observing. It's
yeah,
sort of observational, but he knows he chooses a framing. He
yeah,
knows that he's editing. He's a story. He calls
yeah,
it reality fiction. So, anyways,
yeah. Okay.
there are exceptions. Maybe. So James, what
Mm,
first attracted you? Let's just ask for like three tipping points. What
mm,
first attracted you to pursue painting? Then what first attracted you to pursue philosophy? And then what
mm.
first attracted you to be an interviewer? Just sort of like tipping points briefly.
The- These are all fairly clear answers, to be honest. I was attracted to painting because art was the one thing I was fairly good at in school. So then I went through, did art college, art university, and then it turns out in art university I wasn't actually all that good at making art. I was too lazy. Artists are extremely motivated people, and I'm not very motivated. But I was good at the theory. So then I went on and studied philosophy just to general get a better grasp of philosophy and theory. And then I was writing and stuff, and someone asked to interview me. And then after I did my first audio interview, a few people messaged me to say, "You have a good voice. You should start a podcast." And I was like, seems like a good idea. And then I started one. So it was all kind of just fell into place in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A screenwriting teacher told me great art is when you can clearly see the intention of the maker. Kubrick says the
Mm.
opposite. Great art is when you can clearly not see the intention of the maker. What role does intention play in your creative process?
Um, my intent, my only intent is ever to promote, because I'm mostly talking about other people's ideas. So my intent is only to make sure by the end of the talk that you get a clear idea of their ideas. So it's not, I don't have much, I would, unless I'm blind to it, I don't have much intent of my own. And artists that make it all about their own intent, like Tracy Emin and all these, all this narcissistic, arrogant stuff about their life. I don't care about their life. I do not care about the artist's life, you know? So yeah.
And so Duchamp said there's no art without an audience. How much do you think of your listener, or, when you were painting, how much did you think of your viewer? When you're writing philosophy, how much were you thinking of your reader? And now, how much do you think of your listener when you're creating a podcast interview?
My general advice and what I stick to is either two things I do. I either make without any thought for the audience, because at that point you're appeasing people, and
Yeah,
we've all seen what happens then. If you're trying to appease the collective, you have to keep grinding things down because the collective's dumb on a mass level. Um, or I think the best advice is make your stuff with one person in mind.
yeah.
So someone not that you necessarily want to impress, but someone who you think might have good taste, and make it with them in mind. But yeah, I once again, it's with the ideas in mind. I've never massively thought about my audience, which sounds bad, doesn't it? Really,
No,
I think about my paid audience, what they'd like.
yeah. Well, no, I don't think that sounds bad. I think Frank Zappa says, I wrote music for myself, and if other people like it, that's great. But I think in
Mm.
essence, he was romanticizing by saying that the
The,
process, because he knew living in a consumer commodity culture that if he hit this note or said this word, someone would buy his music, then he could make more music.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I think there's got to be there is an extent, but I think the authors and writers and artists that I respect the most are the ones who clearly never cared, and they like wrote something. Like for instance, Cormac McCarthy's first book, he just wrote it because he wanted to write, and then he sent it off blind to the publisher, And it happened that they like, he was obviously never going to change that. But probably most of my favorite writers were people who just were like, they just wanted to make the art. And then if
Yeah,
no one liked it, well, who cares? Because
yeah,
ultimately, democracy sort of poisons everything, right? If you ask
yeah,
everyone what they want, you just end up with this horrible thing that doesn't work. And people don't know what they want. That's the problem.
yeah. Igor Stravinsky said it well. He said, most people don't know what they like what they know.
Yeah, but then you just end up in a closed loop.
Yeah, right. But that's like, my friend says the 3 T's of music are technique, theory, and taste. So technique,
Oh,
you know how to do it. Theory is what are you
mm,
doing? But taste, how does one
yeah.
acquire taste? And in your example, how do you acquire the taste to gravitate towards the authors you've gravitated towards, studying and
Yeah.
yeah.
Well,
How
I
did
well I well I have good taste, so I don't have to think about it.
That's a high five there, dude. Go do a high five to your camera. That's good. No,
Yeah.
but I mean literally that's why I was attracted to your podcast. Exactly why the people you were picking
Mm.
to interview. I mean, you could have picked other authors and I
Well,
might have
I picked them on merit. I picked them. I picked them.
married. Yeah,
I picked my. Well, I don't want to say merit. I picked them solely because I think they're doing interesting work. There is
yeah,
like thousands upon thousands of people who are on the podcast circuit who I know I could talk. Well, I have no interest in talking to people who saying the same
yeah,
stuff every time. And a lot of these
yeah,
people are surprised that I ever invited them on because they're just they're academics, but their work interests me, right? So it's
yeah.
always the ideas first. Um, but also that music thing about like theory and technique.
Yeah.
I think a good artist isn't going in with it, going into creation, explicitly thinking, right now I'm doing this technique. They intuitively know that and it
Yeah.
grows. I think if you start, like in photography, there's that rule of thirds. I think, yeah, that applies in some sense. But it's so transparent when something has been, you know, literally shot for shot applied to some technique or something, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because the whole thing I know your word is not you're more like interviewing authors. That's what I rather say I
Mm,
interview people
mm,
and than saying podcaster, but people don't understand that. If
mm,
you go, "Oh, I'm a podcaster," they're like, "Oh, a podcaster, I know what that is." But
mm,
people an interviewer, they go, "Well, what's that?"
yeah.
They just don't know the medium. So go
Mm.
ahead. Yeah.
Well, when you asked me this question, like you said before we started recording, you said, "What would
Yeah.
you reply to people to say what you do at a party?" I think you said. The
Yes.
problem is I don't talk to people, Jerry. I don't go to parties, right? So I have no answer for that. I've got stuff to do. No, I don't really talk to people for that reason as well. It's
Yeah.
like,
No.
they'll say, "What are you doing?" Like you say, I interview people and they don't really get what it is, and I go,
Yeah.
to a certain degree, I don't care if they don't get what it. Like I don't.
Right, right,
And then
right.
they go, send, I bet they say this to you as well. Send me the link and I'll listen to it. And I say,
Yeah,
no. I always say no. Unless you've come across it naturally, I don't want you listening to it. It's not for you
yeah,
because you're not interested in it already, right? It's
yeah,
like someone saying, like, here's my link to a football podcast. I don't care. I'm not going to listen
yeah,
to it.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's being proactive. Someone said that to me once. I said, "Well, can you send me your schedule of events?" I goes, "Just go to my website." She goes, "You're asking me to be proactive."
Yeah.
And I picked that up. I was like, "Yeah, if you but that's a great thing." Bob Dobbs said a great line once. He said, "If McLuhan had a website, he wouldn't give the URL out."
Mm. I think it would be like a huge string, like 200 random letters and numbers that you have to like.
Right. So, McLuhan said everything we invent extends some humanness.
Uh,
So, knife and fork extends our teeth, clothes extend our skin.
mm,
Maybe philosophy or religion, non-tangible things extend consciousness, whatever.
mm.
Like, what does the tool of interviewing the author. Let's say if it's not, let's just say the platform of Zoom, let's say
Yeah.
the interviewing author's platform, what humanness does that extend for you?
Over socialization,
Wow, that's
because it isn't social. No amount of virtual chat online is social. It just does
yeah,
not. It does not. It's information.
yeah,
It's information based communication, but it certainly doesn't. It makes you realize all the elements of socialization which are actually important. Like even
yeah,
if me and you were having this exact same conversation, but we were just both in your house or whatever, or in my flat, just our bodies being like close, right? It changes the whole dynamic. So this is
totally,
pure information. So it's an
totally,
extension of knowledge. It's an extension of pride, right? It's you turn on the screen. Here's what I know. Here's me
yeah.
saying interesting things. Yeah.
It's good, very good. Yeah, I mean, I heard someone yesterday say what I've been saying because I've done Zooms for since the COVID started. I
Mm,
said, I've done events with people in a room for 40 years.
mm,
And I'm sorry to say, but all my events on Zoom are better. People are more attentive
mm.
and they're more present. And I'm like, they don't want to hear that. They want to hear, well, when are you going to start up your live events again? I go, not sorry.
It's
And
because
they're
you
like,
can
what?
relax. It's because you can relax. People like being in their
You
own
can
homes.
relax. There's
Yeah.
various reasons, but it's
Yeah.
amazing. So Michael Apted, the filmmaker, I
Mm,
asked him 40 years ago, why do rock video editors feel so obliged to edit fast? Most people don't know Abel Gance invented rapid montage in 1922. But
mm,
in the 80s, with MTV, it became so dominant that Marty Scorsese said, I cut my films faster because of MTV. Michael
mm.
Apted said, because we've learned to take in information faster. So I'm asking this with a bias. Can we literally learn to take in information faster, or are we just brainwashed to believe we can?
You can, but the quality of it is far, far less.
Yeah,
Because you're just not living. Once again, you're not given time to digest it. And we found this with TikTok, right? TikTok is. I would like to see how someone could make us take in information faster than TikTok, because you're literally just scrolling like that. Like it's an infinite stream of like minute quick cut videos. I'm not on TikTok. I don't care about it. But YouTube's doing the same thing where people are more interested in these short form videos. So I want to see where this is going. But ultimately, what I think it does is it just grinds down the processor. So it's like you can take in the information faster, but the quality of the information is far worse. Right? It's just it's data. You know data points, but you've never thought about them. All right.
can humans literally multitask?
No, no, no.
Dude, there's no right or wrong answers to any of these questions, but James, that one you got right.
No, I mean any hypnotist will tell you that they can't.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
a
No, I'm
foundation of hypnotism. Humans, I mean, you can be like probably nanosecond quick between things, but you cannot
yeah,
multitask. You cannot multitask.
yeah. Have you, just an aside really quick, have you ever studied NLP or talked to those people?
Yeah, I've read a few bits on
Yeah,
NLP, and I remember what's that guy's name? Ross Jeffries.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting.
yeah. What was the motive of the cave artist? Your hunch, your guess.
It's probably a caveman who wasn't as masculine and muscular as the other guys, and he wanted to get a woman.
That is a great answer.
There is,
Thank you.
there is. I can't. I was trying to think there of some evolutionary like reason as to why you would do such a thing, especially in times where food is scarce and blah blah blah. That would probably be my genuine answer. Is same reasons as now, right?
Well, that was my next question. Has it changed? That is amazing. I was just gonna say, has it changed? And you said same reasons now. Okay, thank you so much, James. This is really fun. What's more important, conviction or compromise?
Conviction. Conviction. Compromise is dilution. It has its place, but when it comes to artistic work, what's the point in compromising?
Yeah.
You know, maybe money, but then you sold out. You got to live with that.
Well, the great Samuel Johnson quote, "No man but a blockhead ever wrote except for money."
Then most writers are blockheads. Then they are like not many writers are making. I'm a blockhead. I'm fine with being a blockhead. No one writes for money. No one writes for money. You do not go into writing for money.
Yeah. You've accomplished a lot. Tell me how you rate these three elements: luck, skill, and ambition. What played the biggest role, the second, and the third?
Luck, skill, and ambition. Blimey. I'd say, yeah, ambition, skill, luck.
Yeah.
Luck plays a factor, usually maybe right place, right time. But being in the right place at the right time is still, you still have to do that thing, and that's reliant on skill and ambition. But
Yeah.
ambition is the big one. I think more people need to be more ambitious. The people need to just fucking do stuff and just not like, if it messes up, it doesn't mess up. Just keep eating,
Yeah. Warhol said a great line. He says, "Don't worry about what people think of your art. Just keep making it."
Yeah.
Yeah. But that question morphed over the years, James. It used to be, is ambition based more on fear or joy? So let me ask you that one.
I'm ambitious because I don't have anything else to do.
Yeah.
There's no fear or joy. I just need to fill time, right?
Yeah.
And like I can't fill time with the normal stuff like TV programs and stuff. Like I get bored basically immediately. So I have to it has to be something more.
Yeah.
I just filling time. I need stuff to do. I like doing.
That's good. And it's funny why I changed the question was because William Friedkin, the guy who made The Exorcist, said, in Hollywood, skill and luck have nothing to do with it. It's all ambition. T.S. Eliot said, poetry's outing your inner dialogue. What language is your inner dialogue in?
Like vague, intuitive images.
Nice. You really get it. Okay. Two of my film heroes have a mantra like this. George Manupelli says, ignore yourself. Jonas Mekas says, there is no self-expression. And jazz pianist Cecil Taylor says, I'm just a vehicle and this stuff just comes through me. So is art making, interviewing authors more self-expression or more you're a vehicle for whatever dominant technology, culture, or environments are currently present?
You're a vehicle. You're a vehicle. There's a great interview recently with Cormac McCarthy where he says, he said, I got no clue what's going to come out onto the paper. Yeah. And I would agree with that. Like you have your culture, you do your reading, you do your research, and then when it comes to writing, you just got to let your brain, you got to unhook your brain and just let it go for it. I mean, that is you, but the actual process of that seems to be something else, at least.
Can art making be egoless?
No.
Okay, that's funny because that's what 90% of people answered for many years. And then a couple years ago, a woman said, great art is egoless. And then a couple months ago, a woman said, it's got to be egoless. Now, I always followed this up with, was Freud right?
About what?
You answered a question with a question. You win.
Well, about what? He made a lot of predictions. He said a lot of stuff. A lot of it was blindingly obvious, but yeah.
Well, in general, was Freud right? Let's say that.
Yeah, no. In general, he's right about there's some deeper thing. But what I mean is, he said, oh, he's like the first psychologist, maybe like famously, to be like, oh, your habits and your psychology is all to do with your parents. Like, oh, really? Wow, no way. Like that's a surprise. So I always just think, like, I don't know. I have a
Yeah.
preference for Jung. Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, we have a young reading group. It's really fun. So, anyways, that's good because Frank Zappa did a anti-speed commercial in the 60s saying, "Don't do speed, it will turn you into your parents."
I
So,
uh I I think you never escape your there's a brilliant quote I'll quote back to you from Alan Lightman in
yeah,
Einstein's Dreams.
yeah,
He says men never escape their father's shadow and women never escape their mother's shadow. And you know that thing where you see yourself becoming your parents?
yeah,
I think the sooner you do that, the better, because then you can what would you call it, actualize the best elements, and then you actually
yeah,
move beyond it. But I think many people rebel for too long, then they become their parents in later life, and then they never get that beyond thing. So as soon as you see
yeah,
yourself becoming your parents, just accept it and then
yep.
try move beyond that.
James, you are brilliant. That's so good because it's Oscar. Here's the next question, and I rarely ask this anymore, but it's a
Mm,
follow-up. Is that I found when I turned 50,
mm,
my female peer group was fretting becoming their mothers. And
mm,
my male peer group was not fretting becoming their mothers, even though they're raised by their mothers more than their dads. And
mm,
Oscar
mm.
Wilde said, women fret becoming their mothers, men don't, and that's their problem.
Well, there's an obvious reason for that, though. The with
What?
regard, well, a big factor of a woman's life is beauty, is being beautiful, right? So they fret becoming
Yeah.
their mothers because maybe a lot of their
Yep.
mothers have become fat hags or so,
Yeah. No,
right?
I
And
that
for
is the
but men don't realize they're becoming their mothers, no, because they're
yeah.
often with their
Yeah.
fathers nowadays. They don't have anything to become, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
No, that is the obvious answer, and I rarely got it. It was amazing. So, what's the most significant difference between men and women, physical aside?
Hmm. The cliche answer would be emotions. The best thing I was ever told with between men and women was men only need to remember one thing, which is that women remember everything.
That's good.
Yeah, I honestly would put that in there. That the memory and also the focus. Like women have a focus on certain details that men literally are blind to, right?
Yeah,
Like if you ever if you ever have to like clean somewhere and a woman is your like helping you or she's in charge
yeah,
and she says clean that bit and then she'll come back later and be like how did you not see like all this, right? And you
yeah,
literally, if you're a bloke, you literally can't see it, literally can't see
yeah,
it.
yeah. Why do women live longer than men?
They don't do stupid that's fairly obvious as well. They don't do stupid stuff all the time. you know like sometimes you'll be doing something as a bloke and it would not cross your mind that it's a bad idea unless a woman was there, you know?
Yeah. What caused matriarchy?
Are we in a matriarchy?
No, I don't
You mean
well, that
what causes it
no.
if we have it?
No, if they say that matriarchies existed in the past, what
Mm.
caused matriarchy when a matriarchy was present, was happening?
Because as soon as women start to get power, they know that it's a fairly rare thing, so they double down. I mean, if you look at historically, female leaders have been the most ruthless, like cutthroats, because they know that it's rare for women to hold power in that sense. So they defend it with, an iron boot. Um, yeah, so I think it's sort of like a feedback loop, you know.
Well, that's funny because there's this one theory that
Mm,
goes the word mafia begins with the two letters M-A, ma,
Mm, mm.
because women run the world, but they let men think they run the world.
Oh, I hate that quote. I hate that quote.
Good.
It's super dumb.
That is, I agree. That is perception
Hang on,
reality.
let's change that
Go ahead.
quote. Men run the world, but they constantly quote that quote to let women think that they run
No!
the world.
I am gonna switch that forever now. Men run the world. You know, I said that at one of my, Joyce reading groups, you
Mm,
know, and I try not to say, "I'm saying this because I believe it." I said, "This is an idea I've heard, so it's not too biased." And this woman goes, "Shh, don't tell people that." This
yeah,
woman literally
I would add a caveat because I seemed quite joyful
yeah,
when I said that. I would just say, yeah,
yeah,
men run the world. I don't really care either way.
yeah, yeah. No, that's good. Okay, so, is perception reality?
Um, it's a reality.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Why
real,
is it so
real in the
di
sense it's tangible. Yeah.
yeah. Why is it so difficult for humans to consider the possibility that life may be pointless?
I think if you truly internalize that, there would be very few reasons as to why you wouldn't just kill yourself.
Yeah.
After about 35, I'd say suffering, unless you have a an existential structure of meaning, after about 35, suffering is more prevalent than joy, and at least boredom as well. So you after that point, if you truly internalize that life was meaningless, I think you just end it. And to end it wouldn't be a sad thing, right? Because if life is meaningless, it's just like the practical act. It's the only one that makes sense. But
Yeah.
then if everything's pointless, it's just as pointless to kill yourself as to not kill yourself, right? You know what Chiron said? He said, never kill yourself because you always do so too late.
Wow, how do you spell his last name?
Cioran.
Ciron.
No, Cioran. Emil Chiron.
Oh, wow, I like that one, thank you. Lewis Carroll says, "I believe as many as 6 impossible things before breakfast." Have you believed in any impossible things lately?
Yeah, I don't believe petrol exists, and I don't believe in the moon landing. Completely impossible. That's interesting because I probably do. I probably do believe impossible things. I think it's good to believe impossible things. I think you have to have a
Oh,
couple to keep like.
yeah.
Otherwise, you just become a normal person. And that's just
Yeah,
boring. Yeah.
dude, New
Oh,
Yorker
I believe electricity causes lots of illness, but that's fairly well proven now.
oh, yeah. Yeah, the New Yorker magazine just quoted Sun Ra a couple issues ago. "The
Mm.
impossible attracts me because everything possible has been done and the world did not change."
Yeah.
It's
Nothing
really beautiful.
changes. Nothing ever
Yeah.
changes, does it? I'm 28 now, and I'm starting to really feel that. The only change you get is when you do conscious, really. I have real sympathy to these the madmen of history, right? McLuhan, Gurdjieff. I'm really into D'Annunzio at the moment. Gabriel D'Annunzio, Nietzsche. These people who just went for it, who just blew the lid off. Because I think once you realize that nothing really changes and everything's kind of boring, you realize, and also that most people are dead, sleepwalking zombies. You realize you can just do a lot. You can just
Yeah.
blow the lid off things. It doesn't matter.
Well, James, in that regard, tell me, in your pursuit, your life's choosings, what you've decided to do,
Mm,
in your these many years you've been doing this, tell
mm.
me one major element that's stayed the same and one major element that's changed.
Um, I'm still bald. That hasn't changed. Changed. I don't like to change it because the formula works. So that the formula itself really hasn't changed, but what's changed is I don't know, my internal feeling about it. Yeah, not much
Okay.
changes. Not much genuinely changes.
Yeah. Moshe Feldenkrais works with healing and movement. He says it's literally possible to identify a weakness
Mm,
and incorporate it to become a strength rather than we're normally taught to overcome a weakness.
mm.
Tell me a weakness you morphed into a strength.
Uh, I don't know. I don't think I don't think. I'm trying to think. It's hard to see your weaknesses.
Yeah.
Mm. Perfection. I'll give the generic answer of maybe being a bit of a perfectionist. I just channel that into work.
Yeah.
That's a crap answer. I don't really have a good answer for that.
It's all right. Anger can be a productive emotion when fill in the blank.
When you can see it for what it is, when you have control of it. But
Yeah.
like I said before, you can't be angry, right? For it to be productive, you just have to know you know so know there is anger, not I am angry, right? If you are literally anger, it takes up all your energy. But if you're like, I would normally be angry at this point and I'm gonna just push that energy somewhere else. Because you're not it's sort of like pouring water from one glass to the other. You don't have excess energy when you're angry, you're just using up your reserves. So if you're not angry, you just now have that energy left to put somewhere else. It's not like you're not channeling it, you're just using that energy for something else.
So this question, can satire be destructive? I asked a friend who wrote comedy with Robin Williams. He says that's the job of satire. But if you do a cartoon in a certain country and they kill you,
Mm,
a satirical cartoon, some people think dying is destructive. So Swift compared satire to a mirror in which people could see every face but their own. What's the
mm.
function of satire?
I think for me, it reveals how asleep people are, right? So, really good satire reveals who the idiots are because they fall
Yeah,
for it.
yeah,
And then, yeah,
it's
I know
good.
satire has to be really, really good these days because go back into that fiction truer than fact, or fact
Yeah,
is always more true than fiction or whatever, right?
yeah,
Like at the moment, satire. If I was a professional satirist, I'd be worrying because we're at a
yeah,
point where some of the stuff that's going on is beyond any satire I could have imagined, right?
yeah,
Especially in US politics. Yeah.
yeah. Hello. Eric McLuhan taught me the Latin word to make is where we got the word fact and where we got the
Mm,
word fake.
mm,
They're both
mm.
etymologically based in to make.
Yeah. I don't know if I
Is
know any. Do you know any facts? Is there
yeah,
anything you could say and you say that's definitely a fact?
well, I'm more into the word believe has the word lie in the middle of it. So when people go, "Do you believe something?" You want to believe a fact. I think a fact is that I juice every morning for 20 years and it's helped my health. And
You
I
go on a
know it could
juice, like roids?
like no,
Oh,
I juice like ginger, cabbage,
oh, okay.
carrots, like
Yeah.
vegetables, fruits. And it's literally because if you study cabbage, it's good for your stomach. And I had, my heroes are Zappa and Joyce, and they both died of or led their death to from duodenal ulcers. And I mean,
So
it gets all
has this helped your stomach?
yeah, yeah. And I
Can you
had
send
like
me the can you send me the recipe? Because I also have I also am scared of this because I also have
well, yeah,
stuff.
I call it the yuppie stomach disease because everybody just eats omeprazole or they
Yeah.
drink Pepto-Bismol. And I mean, there's no the
Well,
recipe is you buy a
I think
juicer and you juice
okay.
cabbage. Yeah,
Or
you juice
send me the recipe. But I
okay,
think I think stress generally, everyone, when people get stressed, I think most people, different people have a different area where stress presides. Some people get headaches, some people sweat.
yeah,
Unfortunately, maybe for both me and you and Zappa and McLuhan, like
yeah,
stress goes to your stomach, right?
yeah,
That's where stress goes for me.
yeah.
And it's like the
No, it
most
is
yeah, it's not a
yeah,
good place for it to go.
yeah, it's nice, and a lot of people it wasn't McLuhan, it was Joyce and Zappa, both had duodenal ulcers. But here's the funny thing, James, they said years ago that ulcers came from worry and anxiety and stress. And then they
Mm.
go a couple, like, I don't know, like 20 years ago, they go, nope, we proved it doesn't come from that. It's
Ah,
something
what's
else.
proof? What's proof?
Well, that,
What
I
is
love
proof?
you asking that because,
The only proof is the one that works for you.
yeah.
I'm
And I
sick of
was
saying otherwise.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, I think it's placebo with my juice doing juicing for 20 years, but I also haven't had a cold in 20 years. So
I
I
hate the
think
word placebo. I hate the
yeah.
word placebo. It's so stupid, right? Imagine saying that, right? That someone takes a pill and it actually gets rid of their illness, and then 10 years down the line, someone says, "Ah, it's a placebo." Well, it's literally not, is it? It's literally not a
No,
placebo.
no, I
Who
know you don't
cares?
hate what
Like, if it
you
works,
don't
who
hate the
cares?
word, it works. Yeah. Well, this is another line I love to say is science uncovers facts that can be interpreted many ways.
Yeah.
Yeah. You ever read Richard Feynman, that
Yeah, yeah, I like
science
Feynman.
anyway,
I don't understand all this
Feynman
stuff, like, yeah, but
yeah,
yeah, he's
but
great.
I mean, basically, if you go to WikiQuote, it's 10 pages of saying, "Well, science isn't really accurate.
Mm,
It's always in flux, but it's not gonna keep us from trying."
mm.
Is human progress cyclical or cumulative?
Cyclical, 100%. And progress is a myth.
Yeah.
What are we progressing to?
Um,
Like, for society to progress for me means something different for it to progress for someone else. There's no such thing as progress.
yeah. Um, Utah Phillips, folk singer, said, "Anarchy is making rules for yourself and not other people. Who's
Mhm.
entitled to make the rules?"
Whoever owns the land.
That is good.
That's it.
That is.
The only rights are property rights.
What's the difference between rights and responsibilities?
One of them isn't real. Responsibilities, I think, are intuitively deep down real. Like, if you're a parent, if you've had a kid, if you've had a kid consensually and you're intelligent enough, which most parents are, to know what having sex entails, that you're going to produce a child. By doing that act, I would say that you have a responsibility. You've given yourself, you put yourself in a situation where you have a responsibility that everyone understands. But rights, made up, man,
Yeah.
made up.
A socialist, John Basil Barnhill, said, "Where the people fear the government, you have tyranny. Where the government fears the people, you have liberty." So in
Mhm,
2005, the film V for Vendetta paraphrased it.
mhm,
People should not be afraid of their governments. Governments should be afraid of their people. So the question is how do you personally handle false fears? Like the war on drugs, the war on poverty, the war on terrorism. Like you can't have a war on drugs because drugs don't fight. You can't
mhm,
say no to drugs because drugs don't talk. So how
mhm.
do you handle these false fears?
I don't, I don't, uh, I don't respect any authority of the state. So anything they say, I'm like, well, that's just not. You just randomly said some stuff. I don't agree with it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want the state. So, like, and I think for people who are more on the anarchist leaning and don't want the state, you have to start talking as if the state isn't what it says it is. It is just a group of mercenaries who are just pilfering money
Yeah.
from people,
Yeah.
right? So it's like the war on drugs. Like, well, good for you, but I don't agree with the war.
Yeah.
I don't agree with drugs. I don't like drugs, but I'm not going to tell anyone what they can and can't do.
Yeah.
And poverty is the norm. So the war on poverty, it's like poverty is how everything would be if it wasn't for free market. Prosperity
Yeah.
is the anomaly. Yeah.
Really good, James. I asked for 90 minutes, so we got about 10 more minutes. I really appreciate this. A
Hmm.
couple more here. You create what you resist. That's a saying. I'm not saying you, James. One creates what one resists. Bob Goldthwait morphed it into you are what you hate. And James
Mm.
Joyce said, it's a curious thing how your mind is super saturated with the religion in which you say you disbelieve. And Louis Buñuel nailed it. He said, thank God I'm an atheist. So, what's your thought on this idea? You create what you resist. One creates what one resists.
I don't think it's extremely difficult for people to see what they're resisting.
Yeah.
But there is a general rule that the thing you hate most about someone else, the reason you hate it so much is because that thing's in you. Right. So
Yeah.
like the things that you get a little bit annoyed about other people, but you can forgive, the fact you can forgive them probably says it's not really that much in you. But when you really hate someone for something, it's usually a telltale sign that you do that and you unconsciously know you do it. That's why you hate it so much. I don't know what I resist, unfortunately. I'm not psychologically in tune with myself well enough to really know what I resist. I find excuses for a lot of the things I don't want to do. Like I don't like leaving the house and I don't like socializing. But then every time I do the things that I think maybe I'm resisting that and I go out and socialize, I hate it. So
Yeah.
then, I prove myself right, which is great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So these are 5 quick Alan Watts questions just off the top of your head in a few
Mm.
words.
Hmm.
First one, who started it all?
God.
Are we going to make it?
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Where do we put it?
In the ground.
Who's cleaning it up?
The suckers.
Is it serious?
Nah, not really.
It's good. Okay, a couple more. How do you find peace of mind?
I don't. I don't know how to relax, actually. No one ever told me it's a skill. I've never learned how to relax. But why would you want your mind to be peaceful? I only live once. I get bored. I get really bored.
Yeah,
If I woke up and my mind was peaceful and it wasn't going over like 50 places, I'd think maybe that's my last day on earth, right?
yeah.
I wouldn't know what's going on.
On what occasion do you lie?
Uh, Probably to avoid things. Yeah, to avoid things I don't want to deal with. I do lie, yeah, but I don't. The problem with lying is everyone likes to think they don't lie, and I would admit I do lie. Everyone
Yeah,
likes to think they don't lie, but problem with lying is lying implicitly is also the cover, so you can't see yourself doing it. It's very, very difficult.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
If you were walking down the street today and you met yourself as a 12-year-old, what would you say to your 12-year-old self?
I would explain to them how to buy Bitcoin and sell it at the right time. The
That's
uh, but the thing is, I know my 12-year-old self. That would probably be the only thing they'd listen to. If I said to them, "Don't get into drinking, don't get into smoking," they what's the point? And if I said to them, "You're gonna," at that when I was 12, I was really heavily becoming an atheist. If I said to
yeah,
them, "You're gonna be a Catholic in 16 years," then I know myself at that age. I ain't listening to my older self.
right.
So I would just say, "Look, here's how you make a load of money."
Yeah,
That's it. Yeah,
very good. Which way should toilet paper come off the roll, over or under?
over
Why?
because I said so, man.
Well, it is in the patent 100 years ago going over.
Mm,
99% of people say over, but the
mhm.
people who say under have their reasons.
Do they?
If a publisher was to release your autobiography off the
Mhm.
top of your head, what would the title be?
I don't know. I'd probably call it like generic biography.
They wanna scent the glue in the binding. What smell?
Burnt rubber, so they all thought they had a tumor.
Ah! If a statue was built in your honor, where would you want it displayed, and what would it be made of?
uh, Display it like in the most populated place, and then make it of something utterly disgusting.
Yeah,
I don't know, something that reeks. I wouldn't want a statue. I would not want a statue.
yeah. Tell me something good you never had and you never want.
Well, then it's not good. If it's good, I probably want it. Oh, um, uh, I don't know.
You know
I don't
the
know.
answer the
What?
answer the 3 answers I get the most?
Mm.
Money, fame, and heroin.
Heroin's not good though.
I know. Well, this is what I get. I'm not saying it. If you were in a vat of vomit up to your neck and someone threw a bag of shit at your face, what would you do?
I'd say you might as well piss on me as well.
Very good. Never had that answer. Thank you.
Well, dude, you're at your lowest. Like, if you're at your lowest, make sure, like, if you're really at your lowest, double down, because then in the
Yeah.
future, I would know, this is bad, but do you remember that time I was caked in vomit, shit, and piss? Right?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because people like my wife hates when I ask that question, and people are shocked by it sometimes.
What do
But
most
one of
people
my
say?
well, what I'll tell you my favorite a couple of my favorite answers. Well, Mike Kelly said cry, but I get all kinds. But this was the answer I think you could understand and relate to is this
Mhm.
woman on the Venice boardwalk, she said, "I'd take the velocity speed of the bag of shit to swoop my way out of the vat of vomit." And I said, "That's amazing because that's Edgar Allan Poe's short story, Descent into the Maelstrom, where the boat
Mm,
is broken and he watches the patterns of the broken boat parts to swish his way out of being killed in a whirlpool." And
yeah.
so it's like that's how McLuhan opens his first book. He says, if we're swirling around in information overload and advertising, why can't we use advertising techniques to get our way out of it and educate people, which is symbolist poetry? I mean,
Mm,
that's the advertising is just a branch of Mallarmé. So, you know, it's interesting. It's all metaphor. So here's 3 more and we're done.
mhm.
What's the cultural shift you see developing today that inspires you?
Very much. Very much. Um, there's some stuff going on in the tech world but it's all to do with stuff that's already been. So a lot of people are just trying to return to older ways. I'm not
Yeah,
seeing much. There's some guys that are trying to build their own city, which is pretty cool.
yeah,
That but culture on an abstract cultural level, everything's a rehash and it's very transparent. And I've yet to see
yeah,
much that really does it for me, unfortunately.
yeah. So, you know, Joseph Beuys was an agitprop artist. He said, "Make the secrets productive."
Mm,
And it was Thornton Wilder in 1928 said, "Art is confession. Art is the secret told. But art is not only the desire to tell one's secret, it's the desire to tell it and hide it at the same time." James, you've laid your cards on the table for 90 minutes. I'm not implying you
mm,
haven't already answered this. What's
mm.
it really all about for you?
Just getting to the end.
Yeah.
Getting stuff done and getting to the end. I couldn't give you anything more specific than that.
Well, no, that's good because I have a bonus question because you
Mhm.
said that. It's really good. Um, the cliche is that the journey's more important than the destination. And in fact, here's I know, here's how this came about. Uh,
Mm.
Louis Buñuel says, "I'm for anyone who seeks the truth, but I part ways when they claim they found it." Now,
Mm.
90% of people go, "That's great." And then one person finally challenged him and says, "That's bullshit." He says, "If I'm going to seek something, I'm going to seek it because I think I'm going to find it." So then I say the question, the is that journey important than the destination. Why do we have to name or seek a destination if the journey's more important?
Yeah. Well, the thing is for me, a lot of people that question that whole thing comes across as more narcissistic, right? Like about their journey and sharing it with people. I'm interested in the truth, but I know full well it's the truth it's the truth that I'm interested in, right? So I
Yeah,
don't care, like, oh, what's your destination? Well, it doesn't matter to you because you wouldn't understand. Not like, oh, you wouldn't understand it, it's so spectacular, but because it's my destination, right? So I don't really care about the journey or the destination. But I'm mostly in agreement with the journey destination things. But I think it compiles, right? Like certain destinations played a role, so you can't just. It's a bit of both, like most things.
yeah,
And
yeah.
and and also, it's one of those quotes where everyone I've heard who's emphasized that journey destination quote has been a pretentious hippie, and I just don't want anything to do with them.
That is that's good. But you said to get to the end, which I thought was good because you
Yeah,
said,
because you get to see. Like I'm scared of death, but I'm super excited for it because there ain't much difference in life unless you create it. And death is the thing where I'm like, man, I
yeah,
wonder, like it's truly unknown. So I'm
yeah,
excited in that sense of I'll truly get to experience something new,
yeah,
and it's going to happen.
yeah. Well, just a couple more now because you really brought, there's these people in Paris in the 20s that were basically psychogeography,
Mm,
flaneurs. Just sit
mm,
at a coffee house and talk and they change the world. So
mm,
we don't necessarily have to have a destination,
mm.
that we don't necessarily have to name a destination. And then, Auden the poet said, paraphrasing him, said, "The mystery of art is that we don't know if it activates or pacifies us."
Mm. Am I allowed to say I don't care?
Well, oh, of course. Be
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
because
don't care. That no, whenever I was in art school, I wanted to be doing, and I
yeah,
love the theory, but I always hated the question, what is the purpose of art? Or
right.
anything along those vague
Yeah,
lines. Is it meant to be doing this or that, right? Those
yeah,
obligatory statements
yeah.
again. For who? Who cares?
No, that's the back to McLuhan said the Balinese have no word for art. They do everything as well as they can.
Mm. Mm. That's good.
That's
Yeah.
a good one, yeah. But Bersani studied Mallarmé, the symbolist poet, and said, "The
Mm.
very crises which threatens the writing of poetry sustains poetic composition." So, just substitute anything. The very
Oh,
crisis bullshit.
it's just wanky. Just go read some poetry. You know what I mean?
That
You know what I mean? Like, come
that's
on.
good. That is
My all right, put it this way, put it this way. The best advice I ever got, well, some of the best advice I ever got was from my art tutor in college. And he used to say, "Don't tell me what you're gonna do. Show me what you've done." So
yeah,
that quote is really in line of like, here's what poetry is. I don't care about you telling me what poetry is. Show me some poetry. Right?
yeah,
Like I really don't like exposition. Which is why I'm never really big on reviews of things because I'm like, well, why are you reading the review? Go experience it yourself.
yeah.
I
Well,
understand reviews when something's maybe complicated or whatever, but yeah, yeah.
James, this has been truly enlightening. I really appreciate your time and energy. Last question is, what gives
Mm.
you the most optimism?
Mm. Probably just like animals, dogs, cats,
Yeah,
yeah, that kind of thing. People, yeah, the stuff in the world which if just left alone is wholesome and beautiful, right? Like I don't
yeah,
know, trees, a stream. Leave it be. That ain't changing, right? So I'm optimistic because clearly the foundation is good. And it's, you know, a proof of that is it's only when those things are tampered with that the good goes away. So
Yeah.
optimism is the foundation. You just have to keep fighting against the rest of it.
Beautiful. Thank you. Because the first question was, what's the best thing for a human being? Wilhelm Reich said the best thing for a human being is another human being. And then the last question is, what gives you the most optimism? That's what they asked Groucho Marx at the end of his life. And he says, other human beings. So,
Yeah, there's a lot of other human beings, though.
well, I was going to say, you ending with beings, not necessarily human beings, like animals, cats, dogs, trees, was beautiful. And, you know, it really was enlightening to spend this time with you. And even though I'm going to hit the end broadcast button, I hope we can continue the discussion forever and ever, James. Thank you so much.
Sure thing. Thanks, Jerry. It's great to meet you, man.
Yeah.